Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So yesterday I reviewed perhaps one of the worst ever cars to grace Le Mans, and today, well, I'm doing the complete opposite, reviewing one of the perhaps most famous and best cars to ever grace the 24 hours of Le Mans, the Porsche 917K, or Kurz. Basically stands for the short version of the 917, along with the LH, which is, I believe, a bit of a longer version, but not present in GT7. So let's dive straight in with the first thing that we need to look at, the price point. And it's a little bit rough if you're struggling for credits. 18 million, this thing's going to set you back, a PP rating of 744.12, 800 kilograms naturally aspirated, 598 brake horsepower. Now, I'm assuming if you haven't got one already after the recent credit glitch that most people will go out and buy one anyway. So what better time than now to actually review the car itself. So the Porsche 917K. Why is it so special? Why is it even classed as a legendary car? What makes this thing stand out from a lot of the other absolutely incredible Porsche? Well, it's kind of obvious if you didn't know this already. This car provided Porsche with their first ever Le Mans victory, and I think we know that the rest is history. They then went on to win it a lot of times, obviously being very, very successful in sports car prototype racing and such over the years, as well as many other forms of motorsport. But this right here is the original. Maybe not this exact livery that you see in this one here actually went on to win the 24 hours of Daytona, obviously the 1970 model. You may be wondering what the K actually stands for, and I did kind of hint on at the start of the video that it means Kurz, essentially means short in German, and that's kind of where it's at. You know, it is a short version of the 917. There was many different iterations of this car, but the K itself is the one that went on to win that first Le Mans for Porsche back in 1970, as well as the likes of this exact model that we're seeing here with the Gulf oil livery winning the 24 hours of Daytona. In fact, it was a very dominant car. In terms of overall wins, it won 7 out of 10 of its races in the International Sports Car Championship. So a very, very successful vehicle overall. In terms of its racing history, it's undoubtedly up there with some of the best ever race cars made. You know, it was a very, very successful vehicle. But how is it in GT7? I think we've already got a memory of the 917K when it actually comes to this game. In fact, most people's first ever taste of this car probably came all the way back when GT7 launched and we got over to the S10 license, and this car was the one. This was the one that kind of either got you that trophy and that final gold medal for taking away all of the sort of gold medals from the license tests, or you kind of just went away empty-handed. Obviously this is the car that features at the Spa with the dry line on it, and yeah, you kind of knew about it if you sort of stepped out in the early days before all the physics changes and stuff, that you pretty much end up in the barrier and having to redo it over and over again. So it really was a bit of a brutal license test, and I think that kind of carries over to the car itself. You know, even away from that license test, this is perhaps one of the most sort of brutal and on-edge laps I've ever done in terms of car reviews around the Nordschleife. It was just absolutely insane. There's no other way to describe it. This car is one brutal machine. It really does give me an appreciation for what those guys were doing all the way back in the 70s and such with the 917K, kind of absolutely, racing this thing for 24 hours straight and just going absolutely flat out and, just dragging this thing through the night. And I could just imagine it being such a scary experience. And they do a great job, Polyphony, at kind of showing you exactly what this car's like. In fact, in terms of hitting up over some of these bumps at the Nordschleife, the car would just fully lift off of the ground, the rear wheels not touching the ground until the last moment, at which point you may get a twitch or something like that and it wants to throw you in the barrier. You go for the downshift and the rear end twitches out, or you put the power down on the front end, you feel feel it lift up. There's just so much power and so much to love about this car. It's just absolutely ridiculous. As you can see, even the lap here looking very, very messy, but that is just how brutal this car is. You know, I put way over 1,000 hours into GT7, and when it comes to this car and just how absolutely incredible and insane it is to drive, it really is almost unmatched. You know, going from something like what we saw yesterday with the Nissan Le Mans car, it's just an absolute night and day in terms of just how incredible these two machines and how far apart they are. You know, one's a front wheel drive Le Mans hypercar that absolutely flopped, and the other's just an absolute brutal Porsche that obviously gave them their first win. It's just absolutely incredible. There is no other way to describe this car but an absolute legend. Now, you will know that Porsche then went on to obviously produce a bit of a, I guess, a throwback for the 50th anniversary of that first famous win, which was obviously the Porsche 917K Living Legend, which is a, I guess, modern rendition of this vehicle, obviously fan included as well. Yes, this car does feature that, you know, amazing spinning fan that we see on the back of these vehicles. So obviously Porsche did go and sort of pay homage to obviously an absolute legend by calling it the Living Legend for the 50th anniversary. And again, it just kind of shows just how amazing this car is. This car is, you know, over 50 years old, and it's a very capable car. Whilst yes, it's absolutely brutal, the speeds and just the way this thing corners is just absolutely incredible for a 50-year-old car. So when it actually comes to GT7 itself, there's kind of a weird mix between vehicles. Some of them may be putting out much more horsepower than what you're seeing here with the 917K, but feel relatively slow or just far too easy to drive, to the point that yes, you've got all that horsepower to play with, but it's relatively boring. You know, in this day and age, that 500 plus horsepower really doesn't seem like too much, or like it's going to cause you too much trouble. But this is where the 917 stands out as one of the better cars in the game. It really does feel like constantly it's just putting all that power down, it's lifting the front end, it's absolutely, you know, gonna try and send you into a barrier if you do one little mistake, you know. And I absolutely love that in terms of actively driving these cars and getting the best feeling possible. The 917K really does kind of outshine the majority of the cars in GT7. Yes, it costs a lot at 18 million credits, but is it worth it once you've got it? Absolutely. It's a highly tunable car as well, you know, kind of along the lines of like what we see with the 962C. It can be transformed into an absolutely amazing 700 to 800 pp race car. It just feels absolutely fantastic. So not only is it an amazing car for what it achieved in real life, not only is the, you know, default version absolutely incredible and insanely brutal, but, you know, in terms of the in-game potential for this car, it has a ton of it. And that's what I like about a lot of these, you know, old Le Mans vehicles, whether it's the Ferraris, the Porsches, they all have a lot of potential to actually be usable. So whilst yes, you're putting out a relatively hefty 18 million credits to get one of these things, the time that you're probably going to have and the absolute blast that you're going to have driving this thing really does mean that it is a very, very worthy car, especially much more than some of the other 20 million cars in game. So let's have a look in terms of the lap time itself. So it comes overall 16th, which really doesn't seem too much. But then again, we've got to think this car is from 1970. It's around about 53 years old, almost 54 years old. It's, you know, very ancient compared to a lot of cars that surround it. And obviously it has beaten the likes of the Alpha 155, but then narrowly missed out to the GTR GT500 from 99. So, you know, in terms of overall potential, it really doesn't seem that quick. But again, in terms of absolute joy to drive, the 917K is almost unmatched by any other car in GT7. So there we go. That is my thoughts on the 917K. It is an absolute legend. There is no denying that. What this car did for Porsche and what it kind of led to down the line in terms of Le Mans victories for the Stuttgart manufacturer is just absolutely insane. And in terms of GT7, it's absolutely brutal. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.